The following home inspection video is part of the CPR Home Inspection Video Training Series. CPR provides a full range of home inspection training tools. Please contact us at CPR 5029 Edgewater Drive, Orlando, Florida 32810. Our phone number is 888-647-7277. Welcome to the exciting profession of home inspection. I'm Brooks Carson, your host. Joining me today is John Gibson, a professional home inspector and also president of Top to Bottom Home Inspection Incorporated, located right here in sunny Florida. John, I understand you're going to show us all the major components of a home inspection.
That's correct, Brooks. I sure am.
Well, I understand there's a lot to cover, so why don't we get started?
After you.
Great. John, we're on the outside of the home today, and I understand there's quite a few components just in the exterior portion of a home inspection. What specifically do you look for when you first come up to the property?
I like to take a look at the driveway, sidewalks, look for any kind of settling, any kind of trip hazards. Usually try to look at the outside exterior of the home.
Right.
Look at what type of materials are being used. Take a look at the roof line, materials that are on the roof itself. Is it crawlable as far as getting inside the attic, that type of stuff.
I see.
It's good to look at the actual grading, make sure that the slope and everything slopes properly down on the property itself. Looking at landscaping is very important also. Vegetation, anything too tight up against the home is not too smart. It's always good to keep it far enough away so you don't have any problems with condensation, jump, things like that.
That makes
common
sense.
in Florida.
You know, it is blustery here in Florida today.
Yes.
Is weather a factor
cold.
also? Do you mention that on the
Weather
report?
is very important, hot or cold, definitely. It's important to know temperatures when you're getting out in the field, especially for testing certain items inside the house itself.
I see.
It's, certain conditions you don't want to be running systems.
Right.
Because it could damage the product that's inside the house.
Okay. Now, it's just you and I here today, but what would happen if the realtor's present or even the homeowner's present? Is that a factor? And you know, how do you write that up, or do you invite them to go along with the...
No, I prefer to have everybody here, to be honest with you. It's
Uh-huh.
always best to have all parties present during time of inspection. For any kind of questions that have to be asked, it's always wise to have the seller's agent, everybody here.
I see.
It
I see.
definitely makes it go a lot easier.
Okay, great. John, a few moments ago, we were at the front of the house and we were mentioning all the different components and all the different things, obviously, that you look for in the exterior portion of the home inspection. It looks like, is this the electrical service of the home, and is this something you want to mention?
Yes,
or
it
at least
is.
take note of?
Yep, you've got your electrical meter here, your main
Uh-huh.
electrical box, sometimes followed by sub-panel boxes, but it's very important to locate these things, indicate this on your report, and also to inspect it too, because you have a lot of electrical issues on homes that we come across, and it's very important to take these covers off to evaluate the wiring and other issues that are inside the box itself.
I see, and we're probably going to do a separate inspection just for the electrical section of the home a little bit later on, correct?
Yes, we will.
Okay. Another interesting thing, I noticed the window here. It's flush. It's, you know, you mentioned the exterior, you know, type of material on the outside of the house. What can you tell me about this particular type of window?
Looking at this window, you're dealing with a stick frame home. The trick to that is when the window sits flush, that will indicate that you have a stick house. When the window usually is inward inside the actual window well itself, then you're dealing with a block construction.
I see.
Those
That's
are a couple
interesting.
tricks to that.
I never knew that. That's great.
Yeah.
We're obviously standing on it looks like a block sidewalk that the owner put in. Are we responsible for mentioning things like that on the property?
This is part of the inspection. These are things that need to be inspected. You're dealing with a standard stepping stone type material, and yep, that's part of the inspection. Yeah, definitely it's part of it.
Okay, and then also as we look across the backyard, you know, there's a lot of patio furniture back there, a lot of vegetation. There is a fence. I don't know whether it's ours or the neighbor behind us, but is that something, once again, we mention, and are we liable for mentioning something like that as a home inspector?
As a home inspector, it's wise to look at the fences, although it's not required according to ASHI standards.
I see.
But it's, you know, your client's paying for this type of inspection. I feel it should be something to be looked at.
Right.
But sometimes the trick with a wood fence especially is knowing, does the fence belong to the actual property that you're inspecting?
Makes sense.
So that's why it's important also to have your clients here and the sellers to ask those kind of questions.
Right.
Definitely.
Makes sense. Now this house, obviously, it's probably, I don't know how unique it is in Florida, but it does have a chimney. It has a fireplace,
Yes, it does.
obviously.
Yes.
Is that something that's part of the roof inspection, or should we note that actually in the grounds portion of our home inspection?
You can pretty much inspect it from the ground levels, but I like to get up on top of the roof and get a lot closer look at it, make sure your rain cap, certain things like that, everything's intact. definitely it's an important factor.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, I know we've got a lot to do, so why don't we go ahead and let's get started with the next component.
Sounds good.
Great.
Hi, I'm John Gibson, a professional home inspector. I'm here today to show you how to properly do a walkover inspection on a residential roof. Very important, if you can, observe the roof from the ground level to look for any kind of depressions, any kind of sags in the roof. Next thing you want to do is when you place your ladder against the roof, put it in a secured place. If you do have to place it against a gutter, make sure that one of the ladder rungs is against one of the gutter nails, what they call a ferrule nail. Once you're on the roof, things to look for would be flexibility of a shingle. You can simply grab one of the corners of a shingle and flip it back to look how much flexibility there is in the shingle. That tells you a lot about a roof. Other things to look for on a roof would be different colored shingles, which could indicate a patch job. It's also wise to look at the ventilation. How is the roof being ventilated? It's wise to have at least two means of ventilation on a roof. This is one means right here, what they call a ridge vent. It's got gills on the underside which let the attic air out. On the outside edge of the house, or you have soffit vents, so the hot air comes in through and then is released through the ridge vent. Perfect means of ventilation. Other areas to look for are loss of granules on the shingles. The granules help shield the sun's rays and protect the shingles over a long period of time. Other things to look for is discoloration, torn shingles, shingles that are missing, tree branches that are touching a roof line that will actually take and lift the shingles right up, and then you will see a pattern of movement from the branches. Things like that should be identified in your inspection report. It's also wise to let your client know how many layers of shingles are on the roof. Some roofs you won't be able to determine that, but on a simple gable roof, which is what we call an up and over, go to the side of the gable and you can pretty much tell how many layers of shingles are on the roof. Now of course that varies from county to county, state to state, but it's wise to have that information. And of course this should be rendered on your report as to how many layers are on the roof. Also look at your plumbing stacks. Your plumbing stacks are important to make sure that they're in good shape. Make sure that they're not eaten up around the top edge. Squirrels have a tendency to gnaw down on the lead boots. The lead boot is the boot that goes over your plumbing stack. Also you have rubber boots and you also have PVC. Make sure that they're in good shape and they're not torn or damaged. Other areas also to learn to look at would be your flashings, step flashings around chimneys, around gables. It's important to make sure the flashing's in good shape. Keep in mind water runs downhill. Also, it's not wise to walk on a roof that is wet if you have a lot of discoloration, a lot of mold, fungus. It's not smart to walk on those roofs. Keep in mind though, as a residential home inspector, you are not a licensed roofer. Therefore, you can't give an approximation of life expectancy of the roof shingle itself. But on this type of roof, which is a 3-tab asphalt shingle, the average life expectancy from what you'll be told by a licensed roofer could be anywhere between 12 to 15 years. And that of course depends on ventilation, the climate, and the area that you're in.
The most popular styles of roofs used in residential construction are the gable, hip, shed, gambrel, and mansard styles. Complex designs for larger houses may use variants and even combinations of these basic styles. Gable roofs are named for the triangular section of the end wall between the rafter plate and the roof ridge. Hip roofs also have a ridge, but they do not have gable ends. The 4 sections of the roof slope downward to all eaves on all 4 sides. Shed roofs slope only in one direction. One side of the house is taller than the other. A variation of the shed roof is the butterfly roof, comprised of 2 shed roofs sloped towards a low point at the middle of the house. The gambrel roof or barn roof can be identified by its double slopes, 1 pair of gentle slopes and 1 pair of steep slopes. The mansard roof resembles the hip roof in that it drops from a shorter ridge line in 2 distinct slopes to eaves of equal height all the way around the house.
Where I'm at now is in the garage ceiling. This ceiling here does not have any kind of pull down stairs, so it's important to carry a ladder with you, a 12-foot preferably. Some houses may have more than 1 attic entrances, so keep that in mind. It's also wise when you walk the interior to look for these access points so that you know if you'll be able to use a ladder or not. Before you go into the attic, it's important to walk the roof exterior. Look for any kind of signs of depressions, weak spots, soft spots, which could indicate a problem. Make a mental note in your mind where they're at on that house so that once you're inside the attic, you can go to those areas and look to see what could be causing the problem. Another important rule is to always walk the interior of the house to look at all the ceilings. Look for any kind of stains, any kind of spotting, any kind of bows. Make that mental note so that when you're up in the attic, you can see what could be causing that also. Now, the attic entrance that I'm at here is a scuttle hole entrance to get into the actual attic. You may have more than one on a house. Some attic entrances may be blocked due to the owner's belongings, such as boxes, vehicles, things like that. So if the seller is home, it's wise to have them move these items out of the way if possible, for the fact that basically we can't move furnishings. This way you'll have easy access to get to these attics. Once you get access to the attic, there's many things to look for. A lot of times you're not going to be able to have a clipboard and pen with you, so you're going to have to rely on your mental notes. Things to look for in an attic, first of all, would be your attic insulation. You're going to have many different varieties of insulation. It's not our job as a home inspector, though, to determine the R value of the insulation. But it is our job to determine what type of insulation and also give your client an idea of the actual thickness of the insulation. Other areas is to look at what kind of siding material is being used on the underside of the roof. Is it OSB plywood, which stands for oriented strand board, or plywood, or actual boards? Another thing to look for is it a truss system or a rafter system? A truss system simply has 4 parts. You have what they call the upper cord, your lower cord, the web members, and your gusset plates. Rafter system usually will be for an older house like 1940 and older. Usually what they do is use conventional lumber that's on the property and they build it from scratch. Other areas could be electrical concerns, what they call improper wiring. Look for any kind of junction boxes missing lids, clusters of wires coming together with just wire nuts. This is called improper wiring and should not be in an actual attic. That has to be looked at by a licensed electrician. Other things you need to look for are AC duct lines running through the attic. Look for any kind of disconnected ducts, any kind of damaged or crushed ducts, deteriorated wrappings. Very important, especially in an attic. Other areas to look for are plumbing vent pipes. You could have cast iron, copper, CPVC, PVC pipes running through the attic. Your vent stacks, which are supposed to carry the waste air out through the exterior of the home, should not stop anywhere inside the attic. If they do, that should be noted on your inspection report and a licensed plumber should be called out to evaluate further.
Hi, I'm Brooks Carson, a professional home inspector, and today I'd like to demonstrate how to inspect a window in a residential home. The window that we're going to be inspecting today is what's classified as a single hung window. A single hung window is a window that only moves the bottom section up and down. Only one section moves, obviously a single hung window. Double hung windows would be windows where the top and bottom sections do move. Other types of windows that we may find in homes that we inspect are casement windows, jalousie windows, crank-out windows. Actually, there's an entire variety of many styles of windows, but for today's purposes, we're just going to take a look at this type window. Other things we want to note in the home inspection when inspecting windows are cracked glass, missing glass, fogged glass, things like that that aren't normal as we see this particular window is. Another major component of a window is something called a window balancer. The window balancer's basic function is to keep the window open when it is raised, and it's basically a spring mechanism. If we find the window doesn't stay open, it's probably due to possibly an inoperable or a malfunctioning window balancer, and obviously that's something we'd have to mark on the home inspection report. Another thing to look at is basically the hardware. If the hardware is not operating or it has to be forced open, or if the window is screwed shut, painted shut, anything that would keep the window from opening, obviously it's not our responsibility as a home inspector to try to pry that open to inspect it, but we would note it on the report. These are window treatments, and you'll find these obviously at many different windows. Just be careful when opening the window treatment to get access to the window, that if the window treatment would fall, it would be our responsibility as a home inspector to pay for that. Last but not least, if owner's belongings block the area where the window that we're inspecting is, we are not responsible, but once again, we do have to note it on the home inspection report that the owner's belongings did block that and we were unable to inspect. I think that's pretty much everything there is in reference to inspecting a single hung window.
Hi, I'm John Gibson, a professional home inspector, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to inspect doors on a residential structure. The door you're looking at here is a hollow core closet door. There are other many types of doors that you will find. Pocket doors, which is a door that is actually recessed inside the wall. Keep in mind with a pocket door that the door has two sides, so make sure that you open the door out completely to look at both sides, and make sure also that the hardware operates properly. Another kind of doors that you will come across will be bifold, louver doors, and also bypass doors. What you want to do is make sure that the door closes properly, make sure the door is not damaged on the interior or the exterior part, make sure that the strike plate, the throw, the handle, the hinges, everything is in good shape. If the door rubs and sticks, is hard to close, these are things that should be identified on the inspector's report. A lot of your exterior doors will include French doors, sliding glass doors, things like that. With exterior doors, make sure that the wheels are working properly, the glass is not cracked, and also keep in mind that sliding glass doors can be fixed on one side. So if you see a handle or hardware on one door, that means that that door is an operable door, the other side is a fixed door. And that pretty much concludes the inspection on the interior doors. Hi, I'm John Gibson, a professional home inspector, and I'm here today to show you how to properly inspect a residential bathroom. The one I'm in right now is basically a shower stall. It's not a shower stall combo because it's isolated by itself. But a big issue that you'll have a lot of times is in the tiles on the actual shower walls themselves. In this case, this is a 3-wall shower. You want to do what they call a tap test. You basically just use the palm of your hand or your knuckles, and you're listening for sound. You're looking for walls that are possibly bowed out or what we call pregnant. You're looking for any kind of large movement, any tiles that are cracked or damaged, missing grout, missing caulk. Those are issues that you look for. But you can tell a lot just from coming by hitting it with your palm, like doing this here. Then as you get down closer towards the bottom, your taps should be a lot closer together because most damage occurs from where the actual foot or the base of the shower meets the wall and comes up. So probably 16 to 18 inches above that, you should be a lot closer with your taps, and you do that on all 3 sides of the walls. After you've done that, then you want to go ahead and turn and test on the water to make sure that your hot water is on the left, cold water is on the right. But make sure that you turn the handles completely so that they come to a full stop position. Sometimes the handles will be stripped, and unless you rotate the handle completely, you'll never find that issue. Scalding is a major issue with home inspections also. A lot of people, they may set the water temperature up too high, or you may have the lines, the water lines coming in backwards. Or it's possible in this case the mixer might be in backwards. So it's important to verify once again that the hot is on the left, cold is on the right. Some more information about your shower is a very important thing to look for. When you're testing the water on this type of unit, you have a device in this right here called a mixer valve. It's very common on old homes and also on new construction that the mixer valve will be put in backwards. So when you do an actual home inspection, when you want to test the water, make sure you go to your hot side first and you turn that on full range of motion. There should be a stopping point, and then you turn on your water and you should feel the temperature of the water, of course, being hot, and then you flip it to the other side. Make sure that it stops. Cold water, everything works fine. This is a correct system. No problems with this. Good velocity, water doesn't come out slow, no problems. We're inspecting the toilet itself. When inspecting this unit, it's important to make sure that you do somewhat of a wiggle test. You can do that with your legs. What you're doing is to make sure that the unit is not loose on the floor. Look for any kind of signs of water coming out from the underside of the base. It could indicate that a bad wax seal could be broken on this unit, which is not that expensive. Other things to do is when you flush the toilet itself, when you open up the lid, you want to make sure that you see the water create somewhat of what we call a vortex. The water should go down with no problem. If it doesn't, then of course that should be indicated on your report. But you might want to test it one more time. It's possible that it just was clogged up prior. Other things to do is when the toilet is actually going down, you want to take off the tank lid. Now hang on to these lids because sometimes these lids cannot be replaced. When you take off the lid, you want to actually view the guts on the inside of the tank. Make sure that nothing's leaking on the inside, nothing's rusted or broken out. Make sure the flappers are in good shape, the tank valve's not leaking. Other things you need to look for also on the outside of the tank is make sure there's no cracks on the porcelain. Also look down at the shutoff valve, make sure the shutoff handle's intact, and also make some kind of a note of what kind of supply line is feeding the actual unit itself. With the bathroom vanity, it's important to make sure the countertop is not loose. Inside the actual counter, the sink, the bowl area, make sure you look for any kind of chips or cracks. Indicate that stuff on your inspection report. With the faucet area, you want to make sure that the hot side is on the left and the cold side is on the right. In most cases, that's what you're looking for reasons of scalding. You want to make sure also that when you turn on the handles, that the handles come to a stopping position. They should not free spin all the way around. If it has a sink stopper, make sure that that works also. On the cabinets, you want to make sure that the doors aren't ill-fitting, they're not swollen or damaged. A lot of these cabinet base units are made out of a masonite material, which has a tendency to expand and contract once water hits this. Once you look inside the actual base unit, it's important to look for any kind of signs of leaking around the pipe lines, the supply lines. Make sure the shutoff handles are in good shape, they're not damaged or broken. If you do come to the house and the actual shutoff handle is turned off to the bathroom sink, it's not our job as a home inspector to turn that off. For reasons, well, we just don't know. Here I'm standing in front of what we call a cooktop with an oven on the underside here. It's important when you inspect the ovens itself to do what they call a tilt test to make sure that the oven does not come away from the wall. There's a little bracket that can be purchased that goes on the back of this to prevent any kind of safety concerns, especially with kids. When you have the cooktop itself, it's important as a home inspector to turn on all the knobs, make sure the knobs are intact, they're not damaged or broken. These are not that costly, easy enough to replace, but you just take all your knobs and you turn these all onto high. Make sure that you get a nice red glow, everything works. Make sure the elements aren't broken or damaged. The grease pans that are on the underside, make sure that they're intact, they're not rusted through, and that they're also here during time of inspection. Grease pans are important because you can have what they call grease fires. So yes, they are inexpensive, but they should be in place during the home inspection. When you're testing the oven itself, make sure the door actually stops in a 10-degree position. Make sure you check out the condition of the glass, if it has a view window in the front. Make sure the door gaskets are in good shape. The interior also is in good shape. Try to take out everything you can except for the actual racks. Next thing you want to do is we set the oven as an actual home inspector. Test would be 350 degrees is what you want to set them to. You get yourself a simple oven thermometer, place it on the rack, set the oven to 350 degrees on bake, okay? Wait about 10 to 15 minutes, come back, take a look to see what you've got. Sometimes the stoves might be 25, sometimes 25 to 50 degrees off. Some stoves can be calibrated, other ones may not be able to depending on the age of the unit. Once the stove has reached 350 degrees, all that information should be identified on the inspection report. Take your thermometer out. Next thing you want to do is leave the door at a 10-degree position here. Turn on the broiler. Make sure that the broiler comes on also. You should see a red glow from the underside. If that all works, close your door, turn everything off. Pretty much that's all there is to an actual test on that oven. The next item I want to show you how to inspect is called a microwave. This is what we call a built-in unit. You may have some units that are actually sitting on the countertop. As a home inspector, I don't really waste my time with those because in most cases they're not staying with the house. But with this one here, all you want to do is check to make sure that the interior casing's in good shape, make sure the door's not damaged, the handle's not missing. Some actually have gaskets, some don't. Make sure the glass is not damaged or cracked. You want to get yourself some water in one of the glasses that's in the house if it's occupied. Put it inside, close it. We want to set it for about maybe 1 minute. Any one of the heats is fine. After the 1 minute, when you open it up, the glass might be hot, so make sure you put on a glove or use a hand towel. Take out the water. You can tell the water would possibly be boiling or you might see steam coming off the unit. If that works, no problem. On the microwave also, you have what we call the lights, which you might have little night lights, floodlights. You may also have what we call the exhaust fan. Exhaust fans usually in most cases will be an exterior vented system or a self-vented system, which means the self-vented, the air will be up here on these gills and it actually recirculates back into the interior of the home. With an exterior ventilated system, usually when you open up the cabinets, you'll have some kind of a wooden chase right here, which tells me that the box would actually go out through the roof line and expel to the outside. Keep in mind also, it's not wise for kitchen exhaust systems to stop in an attic. That is considered a safety hazard. Once those work properly, the fans are working fine, it's not making any kind of unusual noise. Everything works good, indicated on the report. That's pretty much all there is to an inspection of a microwave oven. Here we're inspecting the kitchen countertops. Things to look for as a home inspector are going to be your chips, cracks, burns, things like that. You're going to find them in different materials. Countertops come in formica, granite, wood, tile, corian. There's many different kinds. If there are any kind of issues, those items should be identified on the inspector's report. Other things to look at, you have an upper cabinet. lower base cabinet, make sure the doors are working properly, the hinges are in good shape, the doors just aren't falling off, the hardware is intact, make sure the doors are not ill-fitting, that they close properly. As far as the base units on your drawers, if the drawers pull out properly, make sure that the guides are nice and smooth. Sometimes they'll be right off and they just fall right in. Also, you may have some pull-outs on the underside too. Make sure that they're working properly. Make sure the countertop is not loose. It should be secured properly to the base unit. Some will have backsplashes that might be swollen from moisture around the kitchen sink especially. Make sure that they're in good shape. If not, indicate all this stuff on the back of your inspection report. And that's pretty much all there is to inspecting the countertops. I'd like to demonstrate how to inspect a kitchen sink. Make sure that the kitchen sink is mounted securely to the countertop. Make sure it's not loose. Also, your kitchen sinks are going to come in different materials, usually porcelain or stainless steel. Make sure they're not chipped or cracked or damaged on the interior side. Sometimes they might be filled with dishes. It's not our job as a home inspector to remove all the dishes, but if you want to, that's up to you. Things to look for on the faucet is make sure that you always go to your hot side first. Turn this on. You want to verify that your hot is on the left, cold is on the right. Also, these faucets should have a stopping point. If it has a spray arm, you want to check to make sure that the sprayer does work properly. A lot of times you get a lot of buildup of sediment which clogs up the head. Sometimes the actual sprayers are on the actual faucets, or they may be on the actual side of the sink area. Other things to look for are the garbage disposal. You normally have two different types. You have what they call a batch feed, which works by means of a twist top. The other style that you may have is what they call an actual continuous feed, which means it works off of a switch. Switches may be located on the actual backsplash area of the kitchen cabinet, sometimes underneath the countertop inside the actual cabinet here. Make sure they work properly. If they don't work, sometimes on the underside the reset button has been tripped. All you have to do is reach back up underneath and repop it. If it still doesn't work at that point, then that needs to be indicated on the inspection report. Make sure that the splash guard is not damaged, missing. Make sure if you hear any kind of unusual noises that you stop it completely. Check inside to see if there's any spoons or forks, baby jar lids, things like that, which are very common with what we find. That's pretty much all you look for on your kitchen sinks. Another major appliance is the dishwasher. As a home inspector, things to look for is to make sure that when you open up the door, that the door doesn't come crashing down. It should be somewhat spring-loaded. Also, the soap door, make sure that the soap door is intact. Usually it's a spring-loaded type mechanism. Make sure it's not cracked or damaged or missing. Before you turn on the system, if it has dishes in it, that's fine. It can also be inspected that way. Open the door in the open position. You want to set it to either what we call normal wash or short cycle. Leave the door open, close the door. Let's say that the dishwasher has actually ran through its cycle, it's already finished. Before you open the door up, make sure that your hand is dry. Take it, place it down on the actual base of the unit, on the floor. Rub your hand across. What you're feeling for is any kind of water, anything that leaks out. Dishwashers, usually when they leak, will leak out from the sides in most cases. If that's a problem, then that should be indicated on your inspection report. Open up the door. When you open up the door, usually you'll have a whole bunch of steam that comes out. Take the trays, make sure the trays roll out properly, that there's no damage to the trays also, top and bottom. The soap door should be already popped open, which is a good sign too. And that's pretty much all you're looking for on the actual dishwasher. The last item that we're going to inspect is the refrigerator. When inspecting a refrigerator as a home inspector, it's wise to actually write down information about the unit you're inspecting. For instance, what color, the actual make of the unit, and also the model number, which sometimes will be located on the ID tag, located inside the actual unit itself or down on the underside of the door area. Things to look at on the refrigerator once you open this up is to make sure that the gaskets, the seals are in good shape. Most inspectors don't look down at the very bottom where most times you're going to find a lot of your problems where the actual magnetic will bunch up and break. It will tear also. Those things can be quite expensive. They can range anywhere from $30 up to $300 depending on the actual type of unit. So make sure that those are inspected very carefully. Look at the interior, make sure that the trays, especially if they're glass, that they're not broken. Sometimes the doors, the actual trays themselves will be damaged because a lot of times kids will use this as an actual ladder. So make sure that that's in good shape. If it has handles, that the handles are intact also. Look for any kinds of signs of mold inside the actual refrigerator also is a very important thing. During the inspection though, you want to get yourself what they call a digital thermometer. This here should be turned on, placed in on one of the trays, close the door, come back about 5 minutes later. You're looking for numbers anywhere between 34 to 38 up to 41 degrees. Anything past 41 degrees is when mold and bacteria starts to grow. Your freezers, of course, should be set at 0. With freezers, it's very simple. All you do is you check on the interior side, make sure, same thing, that the gaskets are in good shape, the trays are fine. You're going to have your ice bucket trays here. Look inside, see if the ice bar is in the up position. Okay, if it has the features of the ice maker, over here is what we call a special feature, which is also identified on your inspector's report down on the kitchen page. You want to test to make sure that the water works, the ice cubes, the crushed ice, all those items work properly. Sometimes it won't because the ice maker line might be turned off. But that's pretty much it as far as inspecting a kitchen refrigerator. What we're looking at now is an occupied room. In this case, you can't really test a lot of your electrical receptacles. You'll notice you have artwork on the wall, rugs on the floor, couches, furnishings, windows that you can't get to. These items should be definitely notified on your report as not fully inspected.
Hi, I'm Brooks Carson, and joining me today is John Gibson, a professional home inspector, and John's going to basically show us the component of what they call HVAC in a typical home inspection. John, what does the acronym HVAC stand for?
HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and AC.
Okay. It was always somewhat confusing to me, but now I know. Thank you. The second thing I want to ask you is that what specifically are we looking at here, and what are all these components?
What you've got here is what they call a slab coil. They also make what they call an A coil, which is 2 coils soldered together. This is an extremely clean evaporator coil, which should be serviced once a year. Makes it last a lot longer. They always will be at a tilted angle like this. Mm-hmm. Above this is what they call your forced air unit, which is a blower. It's got a scroll inside and takes and forces all the conditioned air up through your plenum box here, which is above the unit.
Okay.
And this here goes to strategic points throughout the house, and it basically brings in all your cold or heated air into the room.
So those are basically the room vents that basically
Exactly.
distribute hot or cold air within the house.
It comes out through what they call your vents or your registers.
Okay.
Is the term they call
Okay.
it.
Good enough. All right. Is this something that I know some people refer to this as the air handler? Is that correct
That's
terminology?
correct. This is your air handler.
So this is
here.
the air handler.
Yes.
Okay. And I've heard the word used in home inspection, split system. What does that mean?
Split system basically means that your outside unit, which is your compressor unit,
Okay.
the condenser unit has your compressor, your accumulator, which holds your freon,
Mm-hmm.
other components and stuff like that, but it's located outdoors.
Right.
This here is located basically inside. So
Okay.
both of them are separate from each other, so it's called a split system.
Okay. Would you find this particular component, the air handler, located, I know, in my home, I have an older home, and the air handler actually is located inside the garage. Is that common in older homes? Do you find this basically on the inside of the home in newer homes? Or is
Yeah.
there a written rule pertaining to that?
Not really. You're going to find them in many different locations. Attics, you'll find them in crawl spaces. You'll find them in closets. You can do what they call a vertical install, or you can do actual horizontal install. They're designed for either way.
I see. Now I noticed this unit, as unlike my unit that I just described, which is in the attic, my unit has an overflow pan on it.
Correct.
Okay. Is that normally, why is there an overflow pan, and what does that
That
do?
is actually what they call a secondary, like an emergency overflow pan, and it's there to catch the water in case the actual unit itself starts to leak, have any kind of problems. The pan also should be equipped with what they call a float switch,
Okay.
which is designed to lift up in case there's a lot of accumulation of water, condensate coming off the unit, so that it doesn't overflow and basically come down through the roof ceiling.
I see.
If you don't have a float switch, then it's what you want to look for is what they call an emergency drain, which will be hooked up to the lowest point of the actual pan, which takes it and drops it off somewhere outside the house.
Okay, as a home inspector, are we liable, or are we responsible, I should say, excuse the word liable,
You
are we
need to look
responsible
for
for
it.
checking that?
Yes, that's something you should
Okay.
look for. At least one or the other should be on the pan.
Okay, great. Now I noticed, you came in here, obviously, we've already done the exterior portion of the home inspection. You came in here, and being in Florida, not today, it's not very warm, but normally it is warm in the state of Florida. What do you normally do when you get at the house? I mean, do you set the temperature down, especially, I would imagine, if the house is vacant, correct?
Yes, weather permitting, nice and cool outside, or even pretty hot outside. We normally set the ideal temperature to 75 degrees is what we'll set the thermostat to get our temperature. And then
Okay.
after the system's been running for at least a good hour, you want to do what they call your differential check. You want to pull your numbers to make sure that the unit is performing properly.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
numbers that you're looking for in this industry are numbers between 14 and 20.
Okay.
All right. You might hear a little different range depending on where you're from, but Florida is usually a standard 14 to 20 degree differential.
Okay, now explain that in further detail if you could, because, you know, being a neophyte, I don't know what you mean by 14 to 20. And I noticed there's a hole right up here
Yeah.
in the plenum, I believe you called it. What is that, and what is 14 and 20?
Well, when you get your readings, your differential numbers, the best way to take your numbers is you want to be as close as you possibly can to the actual air handler unit
Okay.
to get your numbers. One place would be to use what they call a digital thermometer, which is very sensitive. This little
Okay.
probe here. You would put this in at the return side of the grill, and you would probably get a high number. And then
Okay.
you take it out from here, and then you're going to stab what they call stabbing the plenum box. You just
Okay.
put it right into the hole there.
Okay,
There may not be one, so you just basically push it right into it. There shouldn't be any problem with
I
that.
understand, sure,
Okay,
sure.
and then you get your another reading from here. Now this will probably be a much lower number because this air has cooled down.
I see.
And then all you do is you subtract the two numbers, and then that's how you end up with your differential number.
That's where the 14 to 20
Exactly.
comes into play. Okay, I
And
understand.
the numbers will
Great.
tell you a lot with what's going on with the system.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. All right, one last question, just what if scenario. What happens if when we enter a home, the home is vacant, and we find upon setting the thermostat to that 75-degree desirable temperature, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, the unit doesn't kick on? Are we responsible as a home inspector for looking into that, or do we just note that on the report?
There could be a couple of things. Some of the units are going to have anywhere from a 1 minute to a 5 minute delay on
Okay.
some houses.
Okay.
You may have the secondary breaker inside the actual unit might be off. Your breaker might be off at the actual main disconnect in the
Okay.
garage or on the outside of the house also.
Okay.
So the hunt begins. You have to kind of figure out why the unit's not coming on.
If the breaker is off, is there a reason that it's off? Maybe the previous homeowner, whoever occupied the house, is that a safe assumption to maybe, think that there was something wrong with it, so that obviously they
Oh,
tripped
yeah.
the breaker? Is it our responsibility to turn it on, and should we turn it on, in your opinion?
I would try to get with the seller if they're home and try to ask the questions. It's
Okay.
definitely, that's why it's wise to have everybody here at all
I
times.
understand.
Because
Makes good sense.
these might be scenarios that you come across.
Okay,
I
but-
definitely.
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
That's,
go ahead.
that's what I would do. I would try to start asking questions and determine what's going on with it before you start to activate systems, because it might be off for a reason, like you said.
That's true.
Yeah.
And if the seller isn't present, or we can't find out that information pertaining to the system and why it's off, should we just leave it off?
No, I'll probably go ahead and turn it on, but I definitely want to make some kind of note. If not, get a hold of the buyer's agent or possibly the seller's agent and
I
ask
see.
them the same question if they're not already here. But
Okay.
to give them a phone call.
Okay, great. Well, I think we've covered some very good information. It's been quite informative. And as you said, this is a split system, so that tells me what? We have another component, obviously,
Yes.
that we need to inspect. So why don't we go ahead, let's head out, and let's take a look at the outside compressor.
And that will be your condenser unit outdoors.
Oh, great. Okay, wonderful. Thanks.
We're on the outside of a house today looking at an exterior condenser unit. As a home inspector, it's important to look at the following items. Make sure the unit is sitting level. Make sure also that the condenser coil fins are not damaged, they're not clogged up, they're not bent over. And also make sure that the unit has what we call an electrical disconnect.
The main components of a compressor or condenser unit of a split system are the compressor, the accumulator, and the reversing valve. Keep in mind, if the system is a heat pump, it does contain a reversing valve.
In addition to using a digital thermometer to check your AC differential numbers, you can use a device called a mini-temp laser. In this case, the AC system has to be running though to check your AC numbers. Hi, I'm John Gibson, a professional home inspector. Today we're on the outside of a home looking at an exterior main electrical box. With the electrical system, your power lines can come either from an underground source or an overhead, being what they call an overhead service. In the actual main box, you're going to have a disconnect, which could be a 100 amp service all the way up to a 200 amp service. You also are going to find 220 breakers and 110 breakers. Once you locate the main electrical box to the home, it's important to touch the panel with the back of your hand. It's possible there might be some current coming through. Another area also is to look for any kind of disconnected or turned off breakers in this box. It's important to write these down on your report so that when you do take this cover off, it's possible that the breaker might trip and you turn on the wrong one. Other things to look for would also include the panel openings where the breakers go into. You want to make sure that those slots are covered, nothing's exposed, so that fingers or whatever can get inside the box. Once the electrical cover is taken off, it's going to expose all the wires. As a home inspector, there's a series of things that you have to look for and indicate on your inspection report. They want to know what the main service, as far as the amp is, coming inside the actual house. You could have anywhere from a 100 amp, 150 amp, or 200 amp service coming in. This here is your main disconnect, which it will show it in most cases what size it is coming in. In this case, this is a 150. It might be stamped or embossed somewhere on that handle. You also are going to have a series of 110 and also 220 breakers. They also want to keep account of how many 110s you have coming in and also how many 220 breakers and also how many GFCI breakers, which is a ground fault circuit interrupter breaker. Another important thing to look for safety-wise is any kind of what we call two wires going underneath one terminal screw. The phrase is called double tapping or double wiring. It's not a very safe thing to do. Also, you want to look for a lot of wire nuts. That is also considered a hazard in this kind of industry. You got your 3-wire coming in service here, which is a 2-hot leg with a neutral leg. So this indicates that this is a 3-wire inlet service. This here is your lightning arrestor. Really, there's plenty of room in the box. There's no more room in this box to add any more breakers. It's pretty much maxed out is what we call this. This box, in my opinion, is in safe working condition. Another item to look for on the exterior of the house is to make sure that this electrical box is secured properly to the wall, that there's no knockouts missing along the top, sides, or bottom. Another concern also is homeowners have problems with aluminum wiring. A lot of home inspectors make the mistake of writing aluminum wiring when actually the box doesn't contain it. A lot of times they'll bring in the main service and a lot of your 220 breakers with aluminum wiring, but that's only for reasons of a cost factor. The best way to tell if the house has aluminum is by looking at the breakers or looking at the neutral bus bar or the grounding bus bar. That usually will tell you right off exactly if you have that or not. The biggest issue is that aluminum has a high rate of expansion and contraction, whereas copper usually won't have that problem.
The electricity you use at home comes in from the electric company via overhead or underground wires and through a service entrance to a meter that tracks your household's consumption. The utility service entrance often is located along the side of the house or in a basement, garage, or crawl space. When it leaves the meter, the electricity continues on to a service panel that breaks it down into a series of circuits. These circuits deliver electrical current throughout the house. Circuit breakers in the service panel control individual circuits and protect against fire, which could develop if a circuit draws more current than it's designed to handle. Electrical current flows under pressure through the wiring in your house. That flow would come to a halt if you were to disconnect every appliance, light, and device in the home. As soon as a device becomes active again, the flow of current resumes in that particular circuit.
Hi, I'm John Gibson, a professional home inspector, and today I'm going to show you how to inspect an electric water heater. Things to look for would be your cold water shutoff handle, the supply line material that's coming into the water heater, your electrical conduit, which will cover the electrical wire. Most cases it'll be a 220 electrical wire, sometimes a 110. Learn to look at the grounding wire to make sure that the electrical unit is grounded. Sometimes this grounding screw will be on the underside of this plate. Other things to look for are this device here called a TPR valve, which stands for temperature pressure relief. This valve material should be CPVC, copper, or galvanized. It should be 3/4 inch coming out. It should not be reduced in size or plugged at the end. Sometimes these pipes will stop 6 inches off the floor or they'll go to the exterior of the home. Other areas are to make sure that the thermostat covers are not missing either. Keep in mind this is a 220 appliance. As a home inspector, it's wise to indicate on your inspection report for the client the gallon capacity, the brand name of the unit, and also what the wattage of the unit is.
A sizable pipe carries water into your house from a municipal water line or from a private well. If you are connected to a municipal water supply, the water will flow through a meter that monitors your usage. At some point after leaving the meter, the supply line splits. One branch feeds into the water heater before continuing on to various hot water fixtures. If you have a private system, the water may collect in the pressure tank before going to the water heater. In some houses, water may be routed through a filtration or treatment system before entering the hot water heater. The second line services cold water needs throughout the house. Like the hot water line, it splits into smaller pipes that go to individual fixtures throughout the house.